Even before OJ was seen on national television outrunning the police in his Bronco, we've enjoyed a love affair with the 4x4, the sports utility vehicle. And it must be an image thing. It must be. It has to be about image. What other reason could there possibly be for buying a car that's thirstier, more cramped, and doesn't go around corners as well as a family hatch? And if it is an image thing, then Chrysler have been getting it right for some years with this, the Cherokee. It was first introduced into this country in '93, and it looked like that, since which they've sold 27,000, and the car now looks like this. Pretty much like the original one, really, but if a car is selling that well on its image, why change it? This is the new range topper for the Cherokee, and it's called the Orvis. It's based on the limited SE, the top spec Cherokee, which means you already get on board pretty much everything your heart could desire. There's acres of leather and electric everything, including the seat, which is fun. It also means you have a choice of either the 2.5 litre diesel or the 4 litre petrol engines. That means there is no choice because you've got to have the 4 litre petrol. It's a straight 6 and it puts out enormous great dollops of torque. It feels like it's just clawing lumps out of the road. I keep expecting to look in the mirror and see the tarmac all ruckled up like in a cartoon. The Orvis then adds on to that quite a few cosmetic changes outside and in. And it's interesting to see some of the ways in which the car itself has evolved over the years. And here are some of those ways. If you look really carefully, you'll see that the indicators at the front and the grille have subtly changed shape. The car's been extensively rounded off, it's lost some of its squareness, and details like the sills with their ridges have changed and become a lot plainer and cleaner. The interior has been extensively changed over the years. Everything has been rounded off and become a bit softer, perhaps less American, if anything more Japanese in flavour. They're all pretty luxurious. Leather abounds, there's plenty of walnut, though not as much now as there once was. The Orvis version adds further visual cues outside, including the rear boot spoiler, its own special alloys, and these. There's an interesting story about these. They are false, they are a mere adornment, they do nothing. And the managing director of Chrysler UK decided that he liked them and wanted to conduct some customer research of his own at the motor show last year. So he got hold of a set of these, literally stuck them to the bonnet with a bit of blue tack and asked passers-by what they thought. They agreed with him that they looked great. And so there they are. What it is to have power. But hold on, you will say. This thing has a 4 litre 6-cylinder engine. It's going to cost me all of my money to run it. And it probably will. You'll be lucky to see 18 miles to the gallon. But a large part of the real cost of running any vehicle is in the residuals. How much money do you lose when you come to sell it on? If you'd bought one of these 4 or 5 years ago and done as this one has, about 102,000 miles, it would still be worth £10,000. That is incredible value. I like the Jeep Cherokee. In an increasingly bland and homogenised world, it's managed to hang on to a little bit of character and personality. Sure, there are those who are going to complain that it's a bit more cramped inside than it might be and that it uses a lot of fuel and perhaps it's a bit dated to look at. But to do so is to miss the point entirely. They're probably the same people that complain that they can't get a good crease down the front of the jeans these days. To me, it's an attractive car and it's got a lot for it, particularly when you consider that, OK, it uses a lot of petrol. But if this example, 100,000 miles old, 5 years old, and still retaining 50% of its original value, is any kind of illustration of what you or I might expect if we buy a new Cherokee Orvis, then I think we can forgive it using a bit more fuel than perhaps it should.
It's amazing to think that the management of two such influential car companies as Rover and BMW, which are effectively the same company anyway, could go to such extraordinary lengths to completely overshadow the launch of a new model, and a model that could be the saviour for Rover cars. Now, I'm talking about the new Rover 75. It's our first chance here today to see it, and your first chance on network television to review just how good the Rover 75 could be. And it could be the saviour for the Rover car company. Now, in case you've been out of the country for the past couple of weeks or been asleep, the boardroom battle at BMW, which led to the removal of Chairman Bernd Pischrieder, are the problems that we're talking about. Bernd Pischrieder was the guardian angel for Rover cars. But what we want to see is whether Rover have succeeded in producing an Executive Express, a car that can take on the likes of BMW, Audi, Mercedes, and even the Alfa 156. On first looks, the car seems big, grand, and with a somewhat regal presence to it, not unlike the Rovers of the 1950s and 1960s, and that is completely intentional. This car wouldn't look out of place parked outside number 10 Downing Street. It also reminds you very much of the new Jaguar S-Type, a sweeping rear end, lots of chrome on the exterior, and those two front headlights, and rather interesting that both cars were launched at the same time at the British Motor Show. The 75 is a replacement for both the 600 and 800 in the Rover range, and in terms of size it sits slap bang in the middle of those two cars. It's bigger than a 3 Series, an Audi A4 or a Mercedes C-Class. So maybe this car is beginning to move into the next segment, a 5 Series size car for the price of a 3 Series one. Now, stepping inside the 75 is almost an event in itself. It's almost retro styling gone completely mad, but personally I love the wonderful styling inside here. Lots of chrome, lots of wood. You can have the option of leather, and these gorgeous oval dials with the cream background are so reminiscent of the Art Deco era of the 1920s and 1930s. Now, you can choose from a choice of 3 different trim levels. There's the basic classic, there's the club, which is this particular model, and the most luxurious connoisseur versions. However, it's just been announced that the cheapest classic model will not be available back in the UK until the end of the year. Why, oh why, do they shoot themselves in the foot? The 75 does drive very well. It's smooth, it's quiet, and the handling really is as good as Rover claim. Now, we've had some pretty awful road surfaces to contend with here in Spain, but the 75 has just soaked them up with ease, and on the motorway at cruising speeds there's hardly any wind noise into the cabin. Now, talking to one of the Rover executives at dinner last night, he said that Rover might just go back into the North American market with 75, and you can imagine this car on the roads of America. It's almost been engineered and designed with that slightly in mind, and surely the Americans would love it. The 75 is a car that, if you want to push it hard and have a bit of fun in, you certainly can. The steering is nicely weighted, it has a smooth feel over differing surfaces. The gearbox, though, is perhaps not as slick as I would have liked, but maybe it's just the one that we've got on the test car here. This new 2-litre V6 power plant in the 75 is very smooth, it revs freely, but for me, it just lacks a little bite. A bit extra power would be nice. The car to go for, I would think, would be the 2.5 V6, which has a lot more power, a lot more oomph, and will be the car to give you enjoyment. Now, the starting point of a car is, of course, its chassis, and in the 75, it's excellent. It's 2.5 times stiffer than the Rover 600, and going around these bumps and bends here, we found absolutely no body flex, and combined with BMW's superb rear Z-axle, it makes a great all-round package. So once you're safely sat inside your mini Bentley, you can see how well the car is equipped. Twin front airbags, electric windows, electric mirrors, radio cassette, leather steering wheel, and so the list goes on. The seating position is fully adjustable, but despite these seats being like armchairs, long-range comfort could be a problem. Rover have invested heavily in the 75, of course with the help of BMW, and £700 million has gone in design, development and the facilities at Oxford where the 75 is built. BMW bought Rover for £400 million and has so far invested £4 billion in the brand. But it's Rover's huge losses which caused the demise of the BMW bosses. Estimates of Rover's losses range at anything from 200 to 400 million pounds. Whatever it is, it's certainly a huge amount of money. So the overall feeling is that Rover have produced a winner. With the 75 you can have some rather wacky colour schemes like this top of the range yellow connoisseur. But the key question is, who will actually buy the 75? They need to get away from that local vicar who drives a Rover feeling and tempt new buyers into the mark. They need to tempt buyers away from the likes of BMW, Mercedes, Audi and even the Alfa 156. Prices have just been announced for the new 75. They start at £18,225, ranging to £25,625 for the top of the range connoisseur model. But would it tempt, say, a 30-something dashing executive from an Alfa 156? Well, perhaps not. But if the 75 becomes your company car and it's sat at home in your driveway, be sure that the neighbours will be giving it some envious glances.
In the words of that well-known song, girls just want to have fun. And what better way to bring a smile to a girl's face than a cold, crisp winter's day, a cluster of hot hatches and some fantastic roads. So what's in the pack? Well, no hot hatch test would be complete without the original.
In the late 70s, VW squeezed a tuned 1.6 engine with fuel injection into their sensible family favourite, the Golf.
It won the heart of everybody who drove it because it provided driving thrills without the financial spills. So is the Golf GTI still the hottest of the hatches? The first impressions are that the Golf has certainly grown up. It's traded in its trainers for a pair of push puppies. The handling feels smooth and sophisticated, as does the ride. It really doesn't have that in-your-face feeling that it used to do back in the 70s. Over the years, the steering too has evolved. It really no longer feels as tight and responsive as it used to do.
Under the bonnet of this £18,000 GTI is a 1.8 turbo engine producing 150 brake horsepower, a top speed of 135 miles per hour, and it'll get you from 0 to 60 in 8.5 seconds. It does need the turbo. The 125 brake horsepower GTI would struggle to pull the skin off a rice pudding.
So the Golf GTI has grown up and it's become a high-class car. But let's not forget that Volkswagen also owns Seat. And Seat make the car that is the undisputed king of the rallies. The car on which they've based this, the Cupra Sport. Very nice. And what about Peugeot, the company that gave us the 205 GTI, the only hot hatch to have had in the 80s? Well, they now give us the 306 Rally. It's lightweight, it's stripped out, it's just perfect for having fun in. The only problem with these two contenders is deciding which one to drive first.
Let's start with the Cupra Sport. This scorcher has a 2-litre 16-valve engine with very similar performance to the Golf. A top speed of 134 miles per hour, 150 bhp, 0 to 60 in 8.5 seconds. Its performance may be similar to the Golf, but the price tag is quite a bit lower, coming in at £15,500.
This car is boy racing at its very best. You get a good hard ride, fast, accurate steering, superb handling, and just enough understeer to put a smile on your face. Now, the only thing that lets this bundle of fun down for me is the gear change. It's a little bit too long and lethargic for a car like this. And I'm going to have to be a total girl here, I'm afraid. The dashboard on the front, which is straight out of the Polo, is a bit too dark and dreary. It could be a little bit more stylish.
And last, but definitely not least, the 306 Rally. Now, this little pocket rocket has absolutely blistering performance. 167 brake horsepower, a top speed of 137 miles per hour, 0 to 60 in 7.3 seconds. Yes, please.
Driving this car is an absolute blast. It really urges you to push it further and further, and yes, it puts a real smile on your face. This is the kind of car that makes you choose the longest route possible for your journey, just so you can spend the maximum amount of time in it. Unfortunately, it's also the kind of car that puts you in danger of losing your driving licence through speeding. What Peugeot have done to make something this much fun is taken the 306 GTI 6 and stripped it right down. There's no electrics package, no air conditioning, no fancy door trims. What it all does is save an awful lot of weight. You get no frills, but you get plenty of thrills.
The engine feels amazing. It pulls well up to 4,500 revs, but then it explodes up to 7,000 in a frantic scramble for the horizon. This is a car with no toys, but you don't need them, because this car is the toy.
So is the Golf still the leader of the pack? Well, it's still in very good shape, although it's gone a little bit flabby round the middle. It's still an excellent car, but it's not quite as rock and roll as the other two. Having said that, though, I've got to point out that it's by far the most reliable and the best quality vehicle here. So what are the Cupra Sport? Well, girls do just want to have fun, and what better than this neat little package to have fun in? The only thing that lets the Cupra down is the gear change. So, the king is dead. Long live the king. I hereby crown the 306 as the car most likely to satisfy a girl's needs. A car like this in your life, who needs them?
Now this is the all-new Honda Accord Coupe. Now as soon as I mention the word Honda, you probably think of this as a Japanese car. If you're a Honda owner or you happen to live near Swindon, well, you might think it's a Japanese car built in a British plant because that's where their factory is. But you'd be wrong on both counts. It's neither a Japanese car nor is it a British assembled Japanese car. This is a purely American car from the wheels up. It was designed in Los Angeles and it's built in their Marysville, Ohio factory. And I have to say, as one who thinks that the last model Prelude looked a bit like a Ferrari, I'm not convinced the stylists have got this one right. Now I have a confession to make because I'm already prejudiced about Honda. Many years ago we bought a Honda Executive 3-door off the Honda press office, and that car ran reliably for 75,000 miles. Only two things went wrong with it. We put it through a car wash twice with the electric aerial up. So you don't need to convince me about Honda build quality and reliability. Now it's important to say that this is not a modification or a facelift of an existing Accord model. It's in fact a completely new car. It's longer, it's wider, and it's lower than the European Accord 4 and 5-door models. We've got a new 5-link double wishbone independent rear suspension, which when combined with the renowned Honda 4-link front suspension, double wishbone again, gives almost sort of racing car design suspension and maintains Honda's tradition for fine handling cars. When I heard this one was built in the States, I was a bit worried that the Americans would have given it a boulevard ride, but this is still very sharp, good turn-in, very predictable. This is the 2-litre version of the Accord Coupe. There's also a 3-litre V6. This 2-litre is the Honda's well-known VTEC, that's variable valve timing. It means the engine is a complete split personality. Up to about 4,000 revs, it's soft and quiet and would suit your granny. Over 4,000 revs, turns into a screamer and goes howling round the rev counter till it runs up against the ignition rev limiter and round about 6,500, 7,000 revs. But throughout that, it's very smooth. It's got twin balancer shafts. Honda suggests that's something new, but I think Dr. Lanchester invented them in round about 1906. This car is fitted with a 5-speed manual gearbox, though I suspect most buyers are going to go for the 4-speed automatic. I get fed up with manuals in today's heavy traffic conditions, that I have to say this cable-operated gear shift with what Honda describe as twin cone synchromesh on second is very sweet to operate. It's well finished in here, nice wood trim and leather. They've obviously learned something from the Rover Association. It wasn't all one-way traffic. Lots of toys, excellent cruise control that I find myself using more and more on the motorways. electric mirrors, windows, seats, you name it. Good in-car entertainment and powerful air conditioning with automatic climate control. Lots of leg, elbow and shoulder room in here, and the sunroof doesn't seem to cut down on headroom either. Oh, and a wonderful little container for your sunglasses. For a coupe, there's a pretty decent boot. The seats fold down with a 60-40 split if you've got a long load. And there's a very useful luggage net to stop small objects flying around in the boot. Getting into and out of a two-door coupe is never the most elegant of exercises, but the seat slides a long way forward, so it's not too dramatic. And in fact, there's a decent seat in here instead of the usual shelf for legless dwarfs. And I'm particularly pleased to see 3 proper sets of seat belts in the back. That's a big plus point. So a nice, light, easy car to drive, good performance from the 2 litre and bags more performance from the 3 litre. But somehow there's something missing. It's a bit soulless, if you know what I mean. £21,000, I think, for instance, the Peugeot 406 Coupe is a far more involving car. And I can't help thinking they've gone backwards from the styling of the old model Prelude. Now, to my mind, this is a surefire future classic.